Welcome to another video where I try to finish my first sketchbook, and I'm gonna use Denise's Earth Friendly watercolor palette excuse me, put together with Da Vinci paint. And I have this sketch I've done last year in July actually, and what my plan is eventually is to color everything on location. Right now I get my sketchbook and I get a pencil, and that's about it. Sometimes even the lines that you see, I do them at home. And I want to change that a little bit this year. Hopefully I get to carry with me a travel palette, and I want to color the sketches on location so I can capture the color of that day and the brightness of the light and everything else. Also, sometimes I know for this particular scene I took a reference photo, but I have no idea what that photo is. It might be on my phone, or it might be stored somewhere, and I don't always have a chance to go back and look at a photo. And for just a sketch, I feel like that's too much trouble. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to try to add a little simple color. I'm going to start with the sky. I want to do almost like a gradient wash, and then blend it in the sea. In the water in this particular location, this is Foley Beach, South Carolina. It has a blue grayish tone. It's a really pretty place. It's very nice location for a vacation, and not so much during the summer, but I like it more in the spring and sometimes even fall. You get a little milder weather, not as hot. So here I go. I'm gonna try and paint the sky. I'm gonna go with, let me find my cheat sheet here. I'm gonna go with the cerulean blue hue, and this is one of those colors that we know it had white mixed in it, so it's slightly opaque, but I believe it resembles that beautiful summer sky you normally get when you go to the ocean. Another project of mine would be put together a traveling palette. Again, I tried to create my first palette, and I might make a video about it to show you mostly what not to do and what are some of the better choices. I know there are several videos on YouTube that provide very good information on what colors you might want on a palette, what would be a helpful way to start on this watercolor journey. And paper has a lot to do with applying color. This Strathmore sketchbook, I don't think it has the highest quality paper. I doubt it's 100% cotton, so the colors doesn't blend as well. What I want to do, more pale wash right here, the horizon, and then add just a little bit of gray in the water and in the sky to create that hazy look in the distance. And one thing I wish Denise's palette would have would be a Payne's gray. I know it's easy to put together a gray color, but I would have loved to have one readily available. So I'm trying to make a gray using a little bit of the leftover on my palette. I have here some blue, and I added in a little bit of green. Now I'm gonna color the water. And what I intended was to do almost like a dry brushing effect, but there's not much texture to this paper, so I don't think that would lend itself to that particular technique. And for the sand, I'm thinking I might use either raw sienna. It has that beigey color, or even a tad of raw sienna deep has a more of a gold hue to it. Let's turn on sand there. It's a little bit more gray, so I'm just gonna softly blend it with some colors I have here on my palette. And if you look at some of the professional painters on YouTube, some of their videos and their palettes look like they're always dirty, and then they end up with these beautiful paintings, mostly in gray tones and just a pop of color here and there, and they seem to just work. I'm very envious of that style, and I hope one day I can master it. So I'm coming back to the sky, and I know this umbrella here had a it was a gold, and this one was a rainbow color, and this one was almost like a lime green. So what I want to do first and foremost is deepen this blue, create a more gradient wash. I like how this dried here in the distance, that pale color. Even the sand and the seawater, it's a little washed out. I'm not sure exactly what color should I add. I'm gonna try a little bit of the phthalo turquoise, but phthalo turquoise can be a little dark and intense, but I think it would give me more of a ocean water color. Yeah, definitely this might be the color of the water somewhere in the Caribbean, somewhere more tropical, but definitely not the South Carolina Atlantic Ocean. So once again, I'm going to try and work a little bit on the sky. Once I blend this horizon line, make it as light as I can. And I want to use some of the cerulean blue again and just add a second coat, a second glaze. And because it has white in it, and because of the nature of the pigment, this color is gonna get but so dark. But I think I like this. One other aspect of watercolor that I have a kind of a hard time adjusting to it is the negative painting, which means just painting around the shapes. You have to be very careful not to go over your lines too much. I mean, if you have a little bit of a bleeding through, or just a little bit of a line, that's okay, but the colors are not gonna be as clean if you get too many colors, too many bleeds over. I'm gonna color this umbrella, and the way I'm gonna do it is get some of the gold ochre. I think that's the closest to the gold color. And I'm not sure how the shadows inside the umbrella were looking like, but I'm just gonna go with what it's gonna look best to my eyes, the shadows that are gonna give me more definition and more shape. And also the rod here was golden. I do kind of like that. I'm gonna let that dry, and I'm gonna choose my rainbow colors for this particular umbrella. And since the small umbrella right here is gonna be green, and I think this green gold is the perfect shade, it's gonna create a little bit of balance between the gold yellow and this yellow green. And in this rainbow umbrella, the largest shape is gonna be right around here. I'm thinking of using my yellow. And that it should create some unity of color, so it doesn't look like I'm using all the colors. And this airlight yellow never fails to impress me. It's just so pretty. And this, again, I said the cerulean blue. I think it has the phthalo blue in it, which is a staining color. But that's okay, this is just a sketch. I'm not too sad about the colors going all over. Trying to correct it. And then I'm gonna try and pick another color. Thinking of right next to it, maybe the Hansa yellow light, Hansa yellow deep, or a Da Vinci red. I might go with this. Kind of simulate an orange. I might add a little bit of red in there. And the red turned out to be a little strong. And that's okay, you just add more yellow. Move the paint around. On the other side of the spectrum, I think I'm doing this in a green color. And I believe the Nice's green should be the perfect shade for that. And then I'll have some blue, maybe 2 shades of blue, violet, and I'll continue here with a red and a pink. And that should be my rainbow umbrella. Since this might be a little flat, you can add a little other colors of green, and the green gold would be perfect. The same thing with the airlight yellow. I can add just a touch of green gold here and there. The colors would be a little more interesting. I'm going to choose a phthalo turquoise for this particular part, especially since this inside of the umbrella is going to be in the shadow. I'm thinking of letting this dry and then just add a glaze of violet. And I also am going to use some violet to create some shadows under this golden umbrella, leaving this part in between the rods more clean and transparent, because that's where the sun is kind of showing through. And here I have this green kind of bleeding in this turquoise, and that's all right. With this paper, I've noticed the colors somewhat sit on top and they take some time to dry. But for a sketchbook for a beginner, I think that's quite all right. The next part, I'm going to use the indenting blue. I think it will be a better transition to the violet. I'm going to use the dioxazine violet. And these colors are already dark. So adding the shadow on top of it shouldn't be too bad. This is a very, very deep violet, almost unnatural looking. I might add just a tad of blue. Or some of the yellow, so it looks a little more, less striking. And then for the last part, I want to use the red rose and then the Da Vinci red to finish coloring my rainbow umbrella. And now that I finished this umbrella and my other colors are dry, the sky to me still looks a little too light, and I know you don't get the nice transition with the lighter part of the horizon, and the sea looks a little too pale. So I'm going to go back and add some more layers of color. I might even try some of the ultramarine blue for the sky, and maybe a deeper fellow turquoise and ultramarine blue for the ocean. And last but not least is this Da Vinci red to finish my rainbow umbrella. I think the hardest part in learning how to paint with any medium is to know your values and achieve the right values, and that means how dark and how light your colors have to be in order to create the mood and feel of your painting. So I'm adding a coat of the ultramarine blue, and it looks quite nice on top of the cerulean. Now all I want to achieve is a nice transition. I've seen a lot of tutorials, a lot of videos on how to obtain a smooth gradated wash, and on a flat piece of paper it looks quite easy, but then when you have to go around shapes, it can be quite challenging. I haven't yet mastered this aspect of painting around shapes and getting a nice transition. Sometimes it helps if you pick the paint with the tip of your brush and have water in the most part of your brush and just drag it across your page, and then the top part would be darker and then it's going to be lighter towards the bottom. It's definitely something requires practice. I like how this is turning out. I'm gonna let it dry and come back with just water to blend this blue to the blue of the horizon. I don't want any sharp lines. And now I have to concentrate a little bit on the water. And what I've seen a lot of people painting the water, they just create smaller shapes in the distance and larger towards the front. I'm gonna mix a little bit of the phthalo turquoise, and I'm gonna grade out with some violet and add plenty of water. I might even add some green. What I'm trying to do is get a blue-gray color. And this is where my color wheel or color charts would come handy to guide me. It kind of showed me what color do I need to mix to get the right shape to grade out. In turquoise, it's closer to green, and we know green and red are opposite on a color wheel. So I'm mixing a little bit of red in my turquoise, and I ended up with almost a violet-y color. And then, like, of course, you can add more blue to move it towards the main color you like. Here it goes. So what I'm gonna do is just add some shapes, kind of like so. Create, and they'll be larger and darker in the front, and smaller and paler towards the horizon. And I know previous book I was showing by David Webb, he has a whole chapter on how to paint waterscapes and waves, and hopefully I'll come with a tutorial. With kind of a follow-up, applying his methods and see if it helps, and where the challenges of following these models they have in different books. If you've seen in my previous video, I tried to follow one of his tutorials, and it was quite challenging. I didn't have the exact colors he recommended. I substituted with whatever I thought it was close, and that didn't quite work out because I didn't realize how important it is to have transparent colors. So my next project is to go ahead and redo the tutorial, and this time I want to make sure I have only transparent colors in my palette. I'm quite happy with how the water turned out. Of course, it's not perfect, and it's not exactly what I envisioned, but my goal is to get this sketchbook finished. Now what I want to do until the water dries off is work on this umbrella, and I'm gonna create some shadows using the gold ochre, the overall color I used to paint the umbrella, and I'm gonna add just a tad of dioxazine purple to create a brownish gray. And if it's too brown, I can always add just a little bit of blue. to give me an interesting color for the shadow. So I ended up with kind of a brownish red. I don't hate it. I think I want it just a little bit more cool. And here it is. I'm just gonna add some shadows. The sun was, if I'm not mistaken, was right on top of us. It was sometimes around noon. And since I don't have my reference photo, it doesn't really matter that much. I'm gonna add just a bit more shadow. Just a tad of blue, make it just a little bit cooler. I like this color slightly better. As for my rainbow umbrella, I'm going to create a grayish violet. And I'm going to paint a light wash on all this part that's underneath. And you're not gonna see much of a difference because the colors are quite dark. And I'm gonna use some blue to cover this stuff. And you can always drop a little bit of blue at this part underneath. As for my figures, I'm gonna add just a little bit of the raw sienna, although it might be a little too yellow. I'll mix it with some burnt orange. Color the people. And the figures in this particular sketch are not that important. They're just kind of stick figures. One important part, or something I really like to do, is add the shadows. And this is kind of what makes more sense in my source of light would be somewhere around here. And just to be in tune with this overall direction of the sketch, I can put the shadows slightly. And they're not going to be long shadows, but just a little bit, like so. And for that, I'm just going to create some sort of a violet gray. And my favorite way to make dark colors is phthalo turquoise and some warm red. And probably one of my favorite ways to make grays. I'm gonna come in And wherever I added some water, I'm gonna drop my shadow colors. And here where the umbrella is, of course, the shadow would be slightly bigger. And if, let's say, this would be later in the day, the shadows could be a little longer. Most important part is for the shadows to be, to follow the same angle. So maybe here I messed up a little bit. This is a non-staining color, so I can remove it quite fast. Last thing I want to do is color the chairs, and I think I'm gonna use, I can either use the gold of the umbrella or use the blue of the sky, or I can go with a red color. But for this particular sketch, I think I would like to use just the blue of the sky, and then maybe add a little bit of blue here so we create a visual triangle. And the same thing as with the people. This chair is kind of in the edge of the photo, but with this one we can add the shadow underneath, and it has to follow the same angle as my figures. I'm gonna add just a few bits of color for this person's shorts. I think I'm gonna use a green, and then a little bit of pink for this board right here. And possibly stronger blue for that board. Last but not least, I want to add just a tiny bit of blue, deeper blue to this edge. And that might be a little too strong. This is my finished sketch. Of course, there's more I could add, there's more I could have left out. Watercolor is definitely one medium that requires time and practice and lots of studying. So don't stop working on your sketchbooks. I think that's the biggest secret with watercolor. Just keep on to, even if you're not 100% happy with your work, keep practice and practice, and one day you'll get to paint a masterpiece.